So by far, the app that I get the most requests from you guys to cover is Notion.
One of my favorite apps of all time, and that is Notion.
Workflow with Notion, nothing
my favorite app.
It's actually pretty
We also
simple.
have it works.
I'm going to be telling you
So
about these
obsessed
pages
with
and more
Notion
my schedule
AI.
where I write tasks.
I organize my entire life in Notion.
If you've seen any productivity videos on YouTube, you've heard about this app. Notion managed to make people fall in love with a piece of software, and its users love it so much that they end up selling it to absolutely everyone. But why? Welcome to the channel. I'm Alex, and I make videos on strategies that successful software businesses use to grow their product. On the surface, it just looks like Notion is collaborating with influencers, running ads on billboards, and even in the subway in big cities. But many startups already do this, and we don't see many getting to 30 million users worldwide, getting a valuation of $10 billion, and competing with giants like Microsoft or Google like Notion does. The fascinating thing about Notion is that its users willingly decide to share the tool with friends, family, colleagues, and on social media. That kind of commitment to a brand is something that's pretty hard to create. So if we look at what Notion is, it's a tool that allows you to build whatever you want with the same starting blocks as anyone else. With it, you get to imagine the perfect workspace for yourself or for your team, and building a complex system becomes play. So it's basically Minecraft, but for productivity. I think the similarity with the blog game is exactly why Notion has been so appealing to its users. So it's no surprise that Notion did so well, as Minecraft is the best-selling video game of all time. Now, this doesn't mean that adding building blocks to an app will instantly guarantee you'll make billions of dollars, but allowing more personalization and giving users the tools to express themselves and share what they build can still drive a lot of growth thanks to the IKEA effect, which is a phenomenon where consumers place a higher value on products that they have partially built themselves rather than on products that are already pre-assembled. The IKEA effect also has another advantage, which is that we love to share things we built and see what our peers created. This is why DIY videos do so well. This is why there are more than 500,000 free Minecraft maps available online, and this is why there are dozens of Notion templates being shared every day on YouTube. And even if it's not the perfect app for productivity, since it gives you almost too much freedom to build anything you want, Notion also grew in recent years because it helped provide comfort when people needed it the most. In 2020 and 2021, lockdowns had changed many aspects of life as we know it, and with all these changes came the loss of control over where we could be and what we could do. And this led to an increase of popularity for activities that brought comfort by giving people a sense of control, whether it was building a DIY desk at home or by building our own digital workspace, block by block, in Notion. So preparation met opportunity, and the timing was perfect for a cozy productivity tool. But timing is not enough. And Notion was able to grow so much in the last few years by leveraging two main strategies. And the first one is crafting a naturally shareable product. Having a naturally shareable product that gets you users thanks to network effects. That's the dream. You get to focus on building a cool app without the hassle of creating marketing funnels, doing SEO, paid ads, sales, and social media marketing. Now, of course, it's more reliable to combine some of these strategies and have a very shareable product, which is an approach that companies like Slack or Webflow use to grow their user base quickly, but crafting a naturally shareable product is still very powerful. It is called product-led acquisition, or PLA. And Julian Shapiro, who has been growing startups successfully for a decade, has written extensively about it. PLA means that your users naturally invite other users while using your product. For example, when you join Slack, you naturally invite your teammates and contractors so you can talk with them more easily. And by doing so, you're growing Slack's user base for them. The three main advantages of PLA are that it can scale to your entire market because it is viral by design, as new users invite more users who invite more. Its cost is usually fairly cheap, and it's more sustainable as you don't need to spend as much money on platforms you don't have complete control on, like Facebook ads or SEO, where you constantly have to reinvest resources to get more results and where costs increase each year. 3. It also gives you more control over the discovery phase of your product, as customers are not going through third-party ad platforms before seeing your app. And not that surprisingly, most major tech startups of the last decade mainly leveraged PLA to grow instead of primarily relying on ads, content, or sales. And Notion is one of them. In his startup handbook, Julian shared 4 main ways to apply PLA to a startup. The first one is to encourage users to invite other users. To do so, the Notion team didn't just rely on the IKEA effect. They also encouraged users to invite their peers by creating a generous affiliate program that allows referrers to earn 50% of all referred payments. They pushed the collaborative use of Notion by creating features and resources that would allow teams to thrive with the tool, and they also created a template system and made each template easy to share, duplicate, and edit, but only if you create a Notion account. As we can see here, there are two types of ways to encourage users to invite new ones. We can use artificial incentives like affiliate programs, for example, but these ones tend to not perform as well and can attract more opportunistic people who are not necessarily your ideal customer. Also, it doesn't seem like a very genuine first impression with the brand. The other way is to encourage natural invitations, which are stronger than affiliate commissions and seem more genuine. As Julian explains in his guide, the poor performance of most referral programs teaches us that new users should come for the product's core value, not for the cash reward. Otherwise, they're likely to leave. For natural invitations to work without artificial incentives, the invitation has to take one of two forms. The first one is that new users are invited to receive something they're owed, like a download on Gumroad, a PayPal transaction, or a Notion template shared by their favorite YouTuber. And the second one is that new users are invited to join a conversation that's important to them, that could be on Slack, Discord, Zoom, or on a Notion document to collaborate on. What's interesting with natural invitations is that the people who are actually delivering the final value to the new users are current users of the app, not the company directly. To find ways to encourage users to invite others, we can ask ourselves if our product is used to send valuable goods between users or facilitate important conversations. If this is the case, we can try to get as many of our users as possible to use that new feature and make it frictionless. And doing this can trigger viral growth via PLA. The second big PLA strategy shared by Julian is billboarding, which is when a user's use of your product is visible to others around them. For software businesses, there are three ways of leveraging the billboarding effect. The first one is through exposure. For example, when users share a product often with others, like for Calendly, Google Docs, or Zoom, it makes others more curious about the tool, which can lead them to sign up. Notion leverages this with their frictionless way to invite new users when you share a template, for example. The second way to leverage the billboarding effect is to embed your brand in communications. For example, sending an email with Apple Mail on an iPhone will add "sent from my iPhone" in the signature, transforming an email into free advertising for Apple. For the same reason, every shared public Notion page has their logo and a CTA at the top of their screen. And the third way is when a product becomes the user's online identity. For example, when someone replaces their Twitter profile with an NFT, they're billboarding for that NFT collection. And the same thing happens when someone describes themselves as the Notion guy, or when Thomas Frank created an entire YouTube channel about teaching Notion, making the trend even bigger. To turn a product into a billboard, we can ask ourselves two questions. Where is our product publicly used? Is it in email conversations, via SMS, on social media, or in forums? And for each place our product appears, how can we make our product more visible in that space? For example, if our app is used for sending email communication like ConvertKit, we could embed a signature that mentions our app at the bottom of each email. The third product-led acquisition strategy is to encourage users to make shareable content online, which will bring brand new people to your app. This can happen on social media platforms like Facebook, Instagram, or LinkedIn, where the main motivation of content creators is to grow their audience by creating compelling content. And it could also happen on more conversational networks like Reddit, Quora, forums, or Stack Overflow, where users collaborate to answer questions on pages that appear in search engines. To leverage user-generated content in our product, we can ask ourselves, how do we entice current customers to create compelling content? How do we make it easy and frictionless for them to share content from our app? How can we make it easy and frictionless to consume said content? And how can we transition someone who consumes our users' content to someone who becomes a user and a creator themselves? And the fourth main way of growing a product with PLA is to trigger word of mouth from your current users. This one is harder to measure and is more indirect, but it is powerful when done well. Julian wrote about two main ways to trigger word of mouth. The first way is creating a delightful product experience by making your product entertaining and frictionless to use. For example, building your perfect dashboard in Notion is way more fun than doing it in other tools. And the second way of generating word of mouth is by creating tribal affinity. which can be done by making people join you, for example, in a social mission like Patagonia, which donated 1% of profits to environmental causes, or Ben & Jerry's political activism. Tribal affinity can also be achieved by making a product more exclusive, which will lead new users to tell others about the product. This is what happened with Clubhouse, but it doesn't necessarily work every single time. Product-led acquisition is only one piece of the puzzle. Notion has a community, and a pretty solid one at that, to the point where it became Notion's free and devoted army of salespeople. When you're an ambitious startup like Notion, you want everyone to use your tool. And this includes big companies. But in order to get them as customers, you need to create more trust by showing that you have a great market adoption and that you're here to stay. There are two sales models you can use to get big clients in SaaS. You can go for the top-down approach, where you prioritize quality over quantity and sell directly to managers, executives, and founders. This approach can be interesting because one sale can mean a huge amount of money, but it can take a lot of resources, closing a deal can take a very long time, and sales can be complicated because you're usually not talking with the person who will use your product. The other way is to go for the bottom-up approach and focus on mass adoption. Then let your product experience turn users into brand advocates at their companies. This approach tends to work best for SaaS companies that offer free or low-cost solutions and can be a powerful growth lever if you have implemented solid ways to grow your business through product-led acquisition. In Notion's case, they sell an affordable product, and a few years ago they had a small team with limited resources. So like many other startups, they decided to go for the bottom-up approach by leveraging community-led growth.
First question, just what is community-led growth? What does that actually mean as a concept?
Yeah, I think it has become quite buzzy, and it's certainly aspirational for a lot of product-led growth companies, and even those that are maybe a little bit outside of the product-led growth orbit. In terms of how I think about what it actually is, it's when your community helps you achieve such ubiquity and such name recognition that it actually allows you to start moving up market into the enterprise. And I know that might be very specific to enterprise-oriented companies, but that's how we defined it at Notion, was the fact that so many people were talking about this, sharing what they had built about it, honestly starting businesses of their own around it to kind of formalize the relationship with teams. I think it de-risked Notion as a choice for a lot of companies just because they had heard about it through so many channels. They had seen it on social media, they've heard about it on a podcast, their friend told them about it, they saw a billboard. Like all of that lended itself to larger and larger companies and teams buying more and more seats. So I think that's the power that the community had for us. And I see that also being analogous to what companies like Figma have been able to achieve.
What Camille is describing is an experience I'm pretty familiar with. When I joined Schoolmaker as one of the first employees, I was the one who sold the idea to use Notion to the founder and CTO. And it's been very useful so far for collaborative work. And this approach has clearly paid off for Notion. Their community now has millions of members in over 40 countries. In these communities or on social media, Notion users share tips, cool things they build, create in-person meetups to exchange on how they use the tool, and some people even make a living from it, like Thomas Frank, who made $1 million selling Notion templates in 2022. But how did they create such an engaged and dedicated community? Luckily for us, Camille Ricketts has the answer for us. She uses this 2x2 grid for community growth.
So if you think about what is going to be right for you at any given time, I actually created this 2x2 matrix, and on the axes you have whether you have hit product market fit or if you're still exploring product market fit, and then whether you're strongly enterprise or strongly consumer. And based on where you land sort of in that 2x2 matrix, there's a form of community or like a community related initiative that could be right for you. So just to give you an example of sort of like an extremely different form factor from Notion, let's say that you're still on your way to product market fit and you're a strongly enterprise oriented product. I think that you have the opportunity to do customer advisory boards, which is really convening like even smaller circles of ideal fit users and making sure that they are connected to each other as well as you, and then incentivized to provide you with feedback, understanding that they're really on the ground floor of this journey with you and that they're going to be able to have influence over whatever you do in the future. Those folks can end up growing into your biggest evangelists. And I've seen that happen a number of times. And I would still consider that community, even though maybe that is not what comes to mind.
I imagine that becomes the seed of a community that you eventually build. Can you give maybe a couple more examples of this grid?
So if you're strongly enterprise and you have product market fit, let's say, this is something that Notion has really benefited from. but really emphasizing the champions and the consultants communities. So the folks who, like I said, may be inside of your customers, who really get your value, really are excited to help you expand, land and expand perhaps inside of their companies, making sure that they have a place to gather and a place to feel like they are more connected with your team than the average person gets to be, that they are special and that they have access. And then on the consultant side, like I said, just making it really easy, removing friction, helping promote the folks who want to be out there, helping you succeed with more customers, like Salesforce. If you talk to anybody who was really early at Salesforce, they really went into this, where they saw people emerging who wanted to help other companies, this layer of people who didn't work at Salesforce, but saw the opportunity to help other companies actually succeed with it, implement it, grow with it. And that's become a massive part of Salesforce's model. And so if you're in that quadrant, figuring out how to start moving people in your customer base into those categories.
This is awesome. Maybe let's do one more of this grid.
So I'll talk about Notion's quadrant, which is the one that I would put like sort of up and to the right, which is you have product market fit and you're maybe a little bit closer to the consumer side of the spectrum. Obviously, Notion runs the full gamut, but I would say especially early on, I think that that's where we saw things really take root. And that's where I think ambassadors and influencers really take off. Individuals who are going to be extremely vocal, extremely excited, and where you're going to see sort of more of this like wildfire spread of at least trying the product, using the product, understanding what the product is. So if you can try to fuel that type of motion, if you're in that quadrant, that's helpful.
I want to come back to this ambassador program real quick, because it feels like something that a lot of people talk about and can do. How does this work? How do you think about creating an ambassador program?
The initial base of the ambassadors program, which started back in 2019, was just 20 people, and they were the 20 people who we happened to see be the most vocal already across Twitter and a couple of other social media platforms, because they had that sort of shared quality of wanting to be really vocal and expressive about their experience with the product. So that would be my advice for how to get one of these rolling.
And then what do you do for them?
Definitely making sure that there's enough incentive built in, right? Because like we said, it's not meant to be a transactional relationship. We want them to feel like they are having a special experience, that they are connected with the company in a unique way. And it was so interesting to us how giving them the preview of features was so motivating to them, and being able to use them and then give us feedback and feel really heard by the product team. So that was like a big area of focus. And I know that that still is, and it's become even more of a robust conversation between the community and the team at Notion. And then of course, like the things that you would suspect around subsidizing events, making sure that people felt that they were actually supported by us to throw these events, and then also promoting their work. So if you look back at the social media channels, so much of the focus is on putting the creations of the people we were working with front and center, as opposed to talking about just what the company was up to.
The fourth element in the quadrant would be the creation of focus groups, which are small, temporary or casual gatherings of prospective users of your product who can provide you with candid feedback on your journey to product market fit. Camille wrote that for many companies, the right fit will be a blend of most of these, which was the case for Notion. Also, she shared these 10 commandments that she's seen help communities thrive over time. I'll let you pause the video if you want to read them. And if you want to go more in depth into product-led acquisition and community-led growth, I recommend checking out Julian Shapiro's Startup Growth Guide, as well as this episode of Lenny's podcast with Camille Ricketts. I learned a lot while writing this video, and I think that the Notion team still has plenty of surprises in store, especially since they started integrating AI into their product and acquired Cron, a popular calendar app. So Notion's future is promising, but all of this wouldn't have been possible if at the end of his school years, Notion's founder didn't have the idea of helping his artist friends create websites very easily. And if you're looking for a framework to find SaaS ideas that are more likely to succeed, you can watch this video where I look into how Peter Levels grew Nomad List and created a small software empire. I'll see you in the next one.